The Premier League season is finally over, and the Manchester United fan in me is happy the season is over, but also fuming because we finished in 8th place. Chelsea have finished above us. Newcastle finished above us. We are officially the banter club. The only good thing is European football is technically still in our hands, although we do have to beat Manchester City, so it's looking unlikely. And while Chelsea have spent £1 billion and all of that, I think it's a disgrace that Chelsea have finished above us. But Chelsea have played better football than us. Their underlying numbers are better. They deserve to finish above us. And what's even more of a disgrace is that Newcastle finished above us, because Newcastle massively deserved to finish above us. They scored more goals. They conceded less goals. Their goal difference is like 30 better than ours. You know, Newcastle have been miles better than us this season. Their underlying numbers are better than us in every aspect. So there's no doubt in my mind that Newcastle deserved to finish above us. But with the injuries they've had, you know, for me, it's a disgrace that we've allowed them to finish above us and we've allowed Chelsea to finish above us. Because yes, Manchester United statistically have the second worst injury case this season in the Premier League. Newcastle are first for that. And Eddie Howe deserves a lot of credit for that, because even with all the injuries, he's played some pretty good football at times. You know, the battering of PSG, the battering of Aston Villa. You outplayed Manchester United in 2 of your 3 games. You know, Newcastle have played good football this season. When they've had the main bulk of players back, they've been good. Joelinton was really, really good today. You can see Joelinton, Bruno Guimaraes, how well they played together. Had he stayed fit and played maybe over Longstaff, Newcastle could have potentially pushed Spurs for that 5th place. Even, I think I generally said this the other day, actually, and people will call me crazy. If Newcastle didn't have their injuries, I think they would have got top 4 over Villa. I do. And I think that there was a couple of people saying Eddie Howe out earlier in the season, but they were social media people. I think what Eddie Howe's done this season is brilliant. I do. As a Manchester United fan, I'm appalled that Newcastle finished above us, because they're the only team with worse injuries than us this season. There's no excuse for it, but they massively deserve it. Newcastle have been better than us in every aspect. Their underlying numbers are very, very good. I thought Lewis Hall was brilliant today, and I think Lewis Hall, potentially Eddie Howe's biggest fault is maybe playing Dan Burn a bit too much at left back. I know that Lewis Hall defensively, there's definitely room for improvement. He's young, he's raw, but Lewis Hall was outstanding again today. Luke Shaw's probably not going to be back in time for the Euros. Chilwell wasn't great and is always injured. So surely I think Southgate will be looking at Lewis Hall and saying, you know what, Luke Shaw can't stay fit. Chilwell wasn't good enough anyway. Why don't I take the risk on Lewis Hall? We'll talk about Lewis Hall later on. Bruno Guimaraes was outstanding today. A world-class performance from Bruno Guimaraes. And I have to say, his loyalty to Newcastle, because apparently he's going to stay, you know, is amazing, because I think he's been playing in the midfield with Longstaff, you know, Lewis Smiley, Anderson, some kids. You know, he's been doing it himself. It's been the Bruno Guimaraes show. He's not, you know, had these brilliant midfield partners. And I think you see Joelinton come back in today and how much Bruno Guimaraes looks. And Alexander Isak, 25 goals this season. Absolutely insane numbers. And Newcastle finish above United, well deserved. And we are going to talk about the Brentford game, a game that Newcastle eased by, strolled by, but made difficult for themselves when it went back to 3-2. But I thought, you know, Harvey Barnes showed elements of what he can add. He's not really been fit this season. The one sympathy I have with Eddie Howe is not just injuries, but he made 4 signings. Lewis Hall, he didn't play, but that was more of an investment signing. Liveramento's missed more games this season through injury. Of course, Tonali's situation's missed basically the whole season, and Harvey Barnes missed basically the whole season through injury. Eddie Howe has basically barely been able to use his new signings this season. He's lost all the players that were key to him last season, bar Bruno Guimaraes, to major injuries, and Anthony Gordon. But Anthony Gordon wasn't as good last season. Anthony Gordon's become good this season, and he's managed to get Newcastle 7th place with all the injuries they've had. And while 7th place is a drop-off from 4th, when you look at the setbacks Newcastle had and the injuries they've had and actually the football they play, and you look at their goal difference, says they should probably be 4th or 5th, I think Newcastle are in a good place. I think if Newcastle can sort out their defence, if they don't have as many injuries next season, I think Eddie Howe can take them to good places. And if I was a Newcastle fan, even though you'd finish 7th, and if Man United do when you don't get European football, I'd feel very positive. I feel very positive, because I think with everything that's gone on at Newcastle, you deserve to finish above Manchester United. You deserve to finish, for me, top 6. And you've managed to get 7th place with all of that as well. Now, I do want to talk about individual performances. I do want to talk about Newcastle's game versus Brentford. But what I will say is this. Eddie Howe only managed 1 less goal than Liverpool this season. Newcastle only got 1 less goal than Liverpool this season. And, you know, Liverpool were top 3 pushing the top. Newcastle have what it's got in attack to push those at the top. They need to fix their defence. They need to fix their midfield, which is massively injured in the Tonali situation. But I do think if Joelinton stays fit with Bruno Guimaraes, Lewis Hall, I think Eddie Howe's finally going to give him a run in, and if he gets going at left back next season, you get Livramento back at right back. You're going to get Kelly and probably tossing in defence to help with stability. You probably sign maybe another midfield signing as well to help out Guimaraes. I think Newcastle will be back in a good place because Joelinton was fantastic today. He's very Mrs. Sitters. Joelinton's amazingly good, but also awful in the same way. In the sense of Joelinton makes Newcastle better. He's brilliant in the midfield, but he does miss some sitters. But he's so key for Newcastle. And I think had he been fit longer, Newcastle would have probably got a few more points. Maybe they could have potentially got some points versus Manchester United had Joelinton been able to play. But Joelinton was good today. I think the way he puts so much power into his performance, he drives the ball with power. I think he's the heart of the midfield, the way he tackles, the way he tracks back, the way he makes everything happen. He's an absolute machine. He's got the energy, he's got the passion, he's got the work rate. He allows Bruno Guimaraes to get a little bit further up because he knows that Joelinton can do the dirty work, and Bruno Guimaraes is a key creator. And we saw Bruno Guimaraes influence the attack a lot better today, and I think Joelinton played a big part of that. But Joelinton's this machine. He's this warrior. He misses a sitter. He's got some bad attributes in him, like missing sitters, but overall he's a good player. He makes Newcastle better, and he is a level ahead of Longstaff, in my opinion. And he allows Bruno Guimaraes to just get a little bit further up and unlock his potential, because Joelinton is the powerhouse that can do the dirty work. But Bruno Guimaraes, hey, what a player. He's got a 100 million release clause. I think there could be clubs out there willing to pay that. And I think if Newcastle can hang on to Bruno Guimaraes and Isak, that will be key. There is rumours of Anthony Gordon to Liverpool, but I don't quite see that happening just yet. But Bruno Guimaraes, 2 goals, 1 assist today. Absolutely phenomenal performance. But his commitment to Newcastle, his passion to Newcastle is everything you want to play up. I'm a big fan of Bruno Fernandes, and Bruno Fernandes, like Bruno Guimaraes, rivals hate. Rivals hate Bruno Guimaraes. They think, what an idiot, because he's so Newcastle through and through, and he fouls, and he can be. And I know that all rivals hate Bruno Fernandes because he's Man United through and through. He can play games, and all of that. But Bruno Fernandes, Bruno Guimaraes, they're for their clubs through and through. And in Bruno Guimaraes, you've got a player that's got that passion, commitment. He gives everything for that Newcastle badge. And I think he's pretty much ran that Newcastle midfield since, I'd say, November this season. He's popped up with goals and assists. He's been key in big moments, but he's ran that midfield with a 17-year-old Lewis Miley, who did well when he stepped in, but a 17-year-old kid. A Sean Longstaff that I think ultimately probably isn't good enough for Newcastle in the long term, but Sean Longstaff gives 100%. And, he's not had really Willock. He's not had Tonali. He's had to run that midfield by himself. I think he's better as a little bit further up, not as a 6. I don't think he's even playing in his best role. But he's given everything for Newcastle this season. And what a guy he has been. I mean, it's between him and Isak for Newcastle Player of the Season. It might go to Isak because of the goals he scored. But Bruno Guimaraes, what a player. I want to talk about Isak. I want to talk about Barnes. And I want to talk about Lewis Hall. So, Alexander Isak has 25 goals this season, the first Newcastle player to score 25 plus goals in all competitions in a single season since Alan Shearer in 2004, which is an unbelievable statistic. You've also got to look at it as well. Harvey Barnes, he's not really played much for Newcastle this season. You've got Isak, who can get 25 goals this season. You've got Anthony Gordon, that's scored against the top 6, all top 6 sides. Got double figures for goals and assists this season and won the most penalties. And you've got Harvey Barnes, that averages a goal, I think, every 111 minutes or 112 minutes or something. I think he's got 5 goals in 750 minutes or something like that for Newcastle in limited minutes, showing that he's clinical. I think that's a goal every 1.6 games or something I've read somewhere. And considering he's been injury prone and he's not been modelling in too much, I mean, that's more goals than Anthony, which isn't hard as well. So I think that Newcastle's attack is in a good place. I think their midfield, if Joelinton stays fit, Willock, potentially, I think there's a good player in Willock. I think Anderson and Miley have shown potential, but I do think Newcastle want a big midfield signing. And if they sort out defence, which it looks like they're going to do with Tossin and Kelly, and probably another, maybe bigger name in there, I don't know, but I think Tossin particularly would be a good signing for them. I think they will be in a good place because their underlying numbers are good. When you look at the injuries Newcastle have suffered, when you look at their goal difference, the goal they've scored, some of the games they played, the smashing of Villa, the smashing of PSG, Eddie Howe has everything to make Newcastle succeed. No manager would have done a much better job than Eddie Howe this season with the injuries. You've got to give Eddie Howe a lot of credit. He's, Anthony Gordon's been fantastic for Newcastle. He could be player of the season. He's developed young players. Yes, there's question marks on why Lewis Hall maybe wasn't playing a little bit earlier, but I generally think Newcastle finishing 7th isn't bad when you have to take into account the context. If you said to Newcastle fans at the beginning of the season you'd finish 7th, you'd be like, what the hell? But when you take into the context of the season and everything, the injuries, I think it's a good achievement. The fact that Manchester United have had so many injuries, and we're saying, oh, but to be fair to Ten Hag, you said all these injuries. Well, Eddie Howe's the only manager that's had more injuries than Ten Hag this season, and you finished above us. But I thought Lewis Hall was up there for man of the match. I think Hall, Joelinton, Bruno Guimaraes and Isak were the standout players today, but Lewis Hall's really, really good going forward. He's got that energy, he's got that excitement. He wants to make things happen. I think him and Tino Livramento, long-term fullback options, look very exciting for Newcastle. And you can tell he just gives his best. He wants to be there. He knows he's not going to get loads of minutes. But what you see about Lewis Hall is a good footballer. He was Newcastle's best player when he played us. He scored a brilliant goal for Newcastle. He seems to love scoring against Manchester United, which is really annoying. But he loves playing for Newcastle. You can tell that. But he's technically good. His touches, his control. You know that Lewis Hall sometimes played in midfield for Chelsea. He's got the ability to invert in midfield. Going forward, in possession, technical ability, Lewis Hall's got all. The way the Premier League is moving, what you need in players, technical ability-wise, Lewis Hall is showing. Obviously, he's raw. He's going to be hit and miss. Things can happen. But if you look at Lewis Hall, and you can see that Chelsea fans are annoyed that Lewis Hall and Maatsen are gone when they've got Chilwell and Cucurella, which is crazy. But when you look at Lewis Hall, you see a guy that's very good on the ball, very comfortable in the session. He's got the fundamentals to become a good player. And he was a great player at Chelsea. It was a reason Newcastle spending a bit of money on a guy with not much experience. Lewis Hall's got the fundamentals to be a top-class left-back. So I think Newcastle in a very good place. I'm still annoyed they finished above us, but the only good thing is Europe is in our hands. But I don't think we're going to beat Man City. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.